Hello and welcome to Ideagen TV. Today I have with us once again Sheri Hashemi, our esteemed friend and colleague, Chief Engineer at Boeing. Welcome, Sheri.
Thank you so much for having me again. It's always a great time to be able to talk and discuss ideas and
Yeah,
further the key topics.
always a pleasure. And today we're kind of talking a little bit more about you. I know we have you on the show a lot and you bring on great guests, but today we're a little bit excited to dig into what's going on with you.
Thank you.
So let's start here. Can you please describe for our global audience what you've been doing within the aviation industry?
Well, I have started as an engineer. I have an undergrad in aerospace engineering with a handful of degrees and currently working on my PhD in aviation, doing research on supply chain resiliency, specifically focusing on air freight. As an engineer, currently work for the Boeing company and have been promoting and pushing for the development of new technologies through independent research and development.
Wow, that's so fascinating. And how did you get to this point in your career?
Um, I I think it attributes to being a little bit relentless, having an increasing curiosity for the world around me, the mechanics of uh, operating in aviation, airplanes, systems, functions, satellites, rockets, spaceships, all of it, being super curious about those types of items. And then also, I think the biggest thing has been focusing on the really, really hard problems and getting the challenge and the accomplishment from tackling the problems that most might not want to sign up for or are more of the underdog problems. So I go after those types of problems because I find them to be the most interesting, the most challenging. They often result in the most amount of growth, and in the end, also the most amount of reward for being able to tackle hard problems.
So you mentioned, some of these problems or tasks, and I know in the aviation industry, these past couple of years, we have seen some insane changes, not just with the industry itself, but with travel.
Mhm.
Um, how would you say you've had to adapt to all of this in the last 2 years?
Well, I think the I think the big piece about what's happened over the last few years is you've got to remain fluid to a certain point. And the constant is the inconsistency that continues to happen as, we go through, from early 2000s into 2021. Now we're here in 2022, and the landscape of the environment in terms of restrictions or challenges or problems or the supply chain shortage that week, the consistent theme has changed, and the consistent theme is some level of churn or, a new element that you weren't necessarily considering previously. So I think just almost embracing the fluidity of the situation and recognizing that, the landscape's going to change a little bit, whether it be in the same day or the same week. But I think holding on to, the aggregate of the experience can be the same look and feel, but recognizing the day-to-day ins and outs might be a little bit different. And I think that helps with having that level of resiliency to kind of keep through and not get stuck on, okay, well, this just changed again. Now we've got to go refigure it out. It's like, oh, we kind of prepared for it. Like we knew something was going to come up, or, well, I guess that's the thing this week, or that's the thing today. And being able to take it from that perspective, because I think the aviation industry specifically has been hit particularly hard from the pandemic and COVID, from fuel costs, now supply chain, every bit of that has some essence that weaves in and out of the aviation industry.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. And I think when you can apply that to kind of any challenge, you're talking about, embracing surprises. It's not necessarily a challenge or a problem, it's a surprise. You have to figure out how to deal with it. And I know we were kind of talking a little bit about this earlier, with the SDGs and in regards to which ones you're passionate about. So to kind of narrow in on these challenges, I want to ask, what do you believe are the biggest challenges for your industry in achieving the SDGs moving forward?
I think the biggest challenge is for achieving the SDGs is people. You know, some of these elements will just remain as elements, and there's no movement on them unless you have people behind them, unless you have people who are adopting them as their platform of choice, putting in their effort and their energy to go solve it. And I think the root of our solution is based in the people, in the workforce, and the individuals who are passionate, and it comes all back around to people.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, talking about people, is there a certain, I guess, specific SDG that resonates more with you in terms of,
Yeah, I am wholeheartedly behind and work towards Sustainable Development Goal 5, empowering women and girls. I was just looking up the numbers, and I have a fellow friends in the research program with me who are focusing on women as well and diverse candidates. And I think it's like 28% of the STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, community, and occupations, 25 to 28% are female. And so it's such a small number if you think about what ideas are in individual people and personalities and perspectives. And so you're really just getting a limited perspective on how folks view those lenses, like how you look through at a problem. You know, you're only getting 25% of your input is coming from, you know, maybe there's more solutions in there. So I feel like, you know, getting candidates of diverse nature and of diverse backgrounds and perspectives and education and experiences is a really great way of tackling some of these problems. Because when you look at it differently, you know, I know when I look at a problem, if I'm in it so long, you know, some of it just inherently becomes part of the problem set in your mind, and you're framing the construct. And as you sit there with that construct, you know, some of those key elements become part of the fiber of the problem or the construct that you're working with. And you might just forget to tell somebody. So when you get into a new experience of someone who's not necessarily familiar, you know, you share that perspective, and those elements that might get missed or assumed, or you assume, can then resurface and come back. So I really feel like, you know, these problems like fuel, having more sustainable sources, supply chains, you know, how you look at problems, you know, as folks are really pushing the envelope on commercial space flight and putting people into lower Earth orbit, and, you know, working towards getting beyond, you know, I really believe that there's a subset of those solutions, and they're in those folks' heads who we're not necessarily being able to incorporate. And by going after that, and through Sustainable Development Goal 5, empowering women and girls, you're going to end up helping elevate and increase that perspective to solve those problems.
Yeah, you know, and certainly the broader your group is within a research situation, or, you know, pushing these challenges, the better the outcome is naturally.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's one of the things that I've really appreciated of having multiple perspectives is whether you use something or not, you can at least check the box. Because in order to really tip the needle, you know, we've got to start making sound data-driven decisions and documenting where we're going from, and really taking, you know, I feel like the research approach helps accomplish some of these things, because you're going to tackle all of the areas and you're going to document it. You're going to say, okay, well, we checked that. So then, you know, as you progress and things evolve, you can go back to that and say, well, is it still applicable? Does it still work? You know, as a subset of assumptions, are we good? Whereas, if you don't have that, or you didn't do that exercise, that you might end up missing out. So as you progress, you might want to pull one of those assumptions that you closed and said null, and it's off on the side. That might be something for later on to pull back in. And that initial baseline and subset can really get expanded, and you can really be robust, especially when you really reach out for the diverse perspectives, and the diverse problem solving approaches from a broader audience versus just sticking with a smaller subset and a very limited perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of on that same note, I know we're going down that road. Is there something, you've been a part of that you're particularly proud of, or project you've worked on?
I'm trying to think of what I can talk about. I think one of the most rewarding experiences is being able to help mentor college students who are looking to get internships in their first jobs out of undergrad. Early career individuals who would just get in to the industry and are feeling their way through and adjusting and figuring out, where's their most productive space that they belong. I'd say the mentoring is probably one of my favorite parts to contribute. There's a whole series of technical problems that I've gotten the opportunity to work. And I think it's, ultimately what it comes down to, and the greatest joy for me in terms of the industry perspective, is delivering. When you can actually, you deliver on time, or you deliver early, you have a complete package, and it's in phenomenal quality, and you're getting the results that you need. And I think being able to deliver that end product to the customer is probably what I enjoy the most out of the industry process of the experience in aviation is delivering delivering hardware. It's one of my favorites.
So I have to ask, then, on that same note, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but talking about your mentorship, what would you say to somebody that's thinking of going into the aviation industry, or starting their career there?
Do it, get into it. That uncomfortable feeling, if you're into it and you're just starting to learn, if you don't have some of the base knowledge that others might, the perception of others having around you, don't let that discourage you. I think it's super important to just get started. It's super important to contribute and add your perspective into those environments, in those classrooms, in those teams, and embrace it. I just was reading a quote, and it was, your comfort zone, if you're hanging out in a comfort zone, it's probably indicative that you're not necessarily learning. And so by being uncomfortable, that's going to help drive to give you that growth, and that growth is going to help you learn. And then as a result, that'll cycle back into the community with the knowledge obtained and shared, and stick with it. It's not always, some of the topics, especially with aerospace engineering, is some of those are not light topics by any means. But don't let those little difficulties in the road discourage you. There are great things for you beyond that.
Yeah, I think that's excellent advice. And then, are there any initiatives you're part of outside of aviation that you'd like to share?
One that's near and dear to me is human trafficking. That was how I got introduced to Ideagen, and it was the work with Rescue Freedom and IBM, and their efforts to fighting against human trafficking. And that just has resonated with me and stuck with me. And, it's a human created problem. We can band together and resolve that problem. And there's so many people who are at risk of being taken into those situations. And, by going after, by helping the minorities and helping those who are underrepresented and those who might not be able to speak up for themselves, you can help not only keep them in safe spaces, but also enable them to get put into places where they can be productive and their most productive contributing selves. And those in turn push forward to solving, the SDG goals. And I think that's how you can help get some momentum. So I'm really passionate about fighting against human trafficking. And, it's Seattle being a port city, we have, it's not uncommon to hear about some of the organizations that do such things, getting attention and having things shut down, but they end up popping back up. So I think it's a very much real live situation that is happening around us, and speaking out for those folks and helping them is critical.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it can be such a taboo subject almost sometimes. And, here we are talking about aviation.
Yeah.
It's worth talking about, and it's relevant to bring up,
Yeah.
especially in a discussion with the goals.
Yeah. And, the airplanes are one of the ways that a lot of individuals who are human trafficked, they use airplanes. It's such a constructive tool to travel and to transport people from A to B, but it can also be used in negative ways. What I really love about the aviation industry is, airlines have human trafficking programs, airports have human trafficking programs, flight attendants are trained, crews are trained, to look for signs, look for folks who might be in a situation where they're being transported, and giving them opportunity to be able to notice and actually say something. And individuals have been, rescued in transit because of this training. Lots of websites for the airlines have specific pages dedicated to their efforts and their training. And I'm about to go on some international travel, and I just even going into facilities, there'll be signs of if you're a victim of trafficking, call this number, or look for this type of person for help. And I think that is a way of combating against the opportunity that people take for such a phenomenally constructive tool and resource. They're great programs to work to help fight against the human trafficking.
Yeah, and I think it's really inspiring. You talked about these signs you see everywhere, that it's becoming more prevalent. You go to the bathroom and there's a sign for, how to garner attention or call attention to it. So I think it's signs that we're moving in the right direction too. It's almost
it's talking about it too, because when you have the conversation, it makes it prevalent in your mind of like, oh, that's a possibility, or oh my goodness, that could be happening around me right now. And it helps create that level of awareness that might not otherwise be present if you don't talk about it. Some of these things are not pleasant to talk about, and like you had said, sometimes they end up talking on levels of being taboo, or that's not it's not a polite topic, or it's not something that we should really discuss. Well, I think embracing those hard conversations, like you embrace hard problems, are some of the ways of building up the momentum to tackle them and ultimately find the solutions. So you have to have the conversations, and the signs are a great way to help do that. And then also the conversations that we have, and then also helping support those organizations like Rescue Freedom.
Well said. I think that was well put, and you kind of wrapped it all up right there. Is there any call to action or anything you'd like to tell our global audience before we have you off?
I would just say, go after the hard problems. Take the challenges, take the chance. You're going to learn something in the process, and that learning equates to growth, and that growth can equate to solutions, and it will, help us all build momentum around these sustainable development goals and help each other and work for a better state of being.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Go after the hard problems and embrace surprises. I love it. Sheri, Hashemi, Thank you so much for being on Ideagen TV today, and hopefully we will have you back soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.